I had promised my father I would assist my brother diligently. I played my part so well that he never suspected a thing between us. Not even on his deathbed. Before he passed, my father entrusted me with the royal treasury, which, in my hands, multiplied exponentially. My wealth grew by the day. With enough money, everything became effortlessly achievable. As if by divine intervention, I leveraged my immense fortune to sideline my brother, reducing the title of emperor to a mere figurehead. The emperor might still be the nominal ruler of the land, but the true power, the one who could sway the nation's destiny, was the owner of vast riches, the grand princess of the Great Dominion dynasty. That was me. Gu Yu, the Usurper. A novel by Melancholy Sweet Potato. Now begins. The Great Dominion dynasty's finances were in perpetual deficit, and decrees went unenforced. Without funds, policies couldn't be implemented. Over time, many court officials bypassed the emperor, consulting me on state affairs. Only after I approved would they submit their memorials to the emperor. He never realized he had been undermined. Consumed by his pursuit of pleasure, he constantly sought ways to seize my wealth. This time, his idea was an arranged marriage. He chose Prince Xiao of the new state, and it was evident he'd made a careful selection. Xiao wasn't some undesirable. On the contrary, he was a prime specimen among men. I heard he was handsome and graceful, capable of reciting poetry at 3 and composing it at 5. A true prodigy of the prosperous state, and had been made crown prince early on. He was the dream husband for many women, though I had never met him. The rumors made me think I, too, would like him. However, the prosperous state and the Great Dominion were separated by thousands of miles, one in the east and the other in the west. Even with all my abilities, I couldn't control the Great Dominion remotely from the prosperous state. And I couldn't abandon everything I had built here. So, for now, I had to let go of this desirable match that others coveted. To make the emperor face reality, I chose the most direct approach. I burned the imperial decree right in front of him. The ministers fell silent, no one daring to speak. The emperor was bewildered and furious but utterly powerless. Watching him rage, my mood soared. I drank several cups of wine. And then, in a drunken impulse, I kidnapped someone off the street. He was supposedly the young master of some merchant caravan. A true beauty. Though young, he had a sophisticated demeanor beyond his years. Even after being brought to my princess's estate, he remained calm and composed, speaking earnestly and logically. He claimed to be from the prosperous state, with an aunt who was a concubine to the prosperous emperor. He was traveling and studying, tasked by his aunt to tour various countries and select jewelry for her. To facilitate his travels, he had formed a merchant caravan. He offered to gift me his caravan if I released him, and his aunt would send a generous gift upon his return. He revealed his identity while humbling himself, simultaneously implying that holding him would cause trouble and releasing him would bring benefits. His wisdom and grace were evident. I had already seized him and initially had no intention of letting him go. But his words moved me, though it was more an interest in him as a person. Because of his peculiar name, Wang Shirley, I couldn't help but associate it with Prince Xiao due to the emperor's earlier matchmaking attempts. If he truly were Prince Xiao, I wouldn't doubt that there could be a verifiable Wang Shirley in this world. Prince Xiao and Wang Shirley were both presented before me, and I might not be able to tell them apart. The prosperous state had grown increasingly powerful over the years, showing ambitions to dominate the world. Therefore, even if there was a slight chance that this Yuan Shirley was Prince Xiao of the prosperous state, I would never let him leave. If he truly was just Yuan Shirley, then he could only blame his bad luck. Out of caution, I ordered an investigation. After some difficulties, I was 90% certain that the unlucky person I had seized was indeed Prince Xiao of the prosperous state. For the past month, Prince Xiao had been staying at my princess's estate under the guise of Yuan Shirley. I, too, pretended he was Yuan Shirley. Prince Xiao showed considerable closeness towards me, eating and living with me without any awkwardness, as if certain I would release him. I once teased him, asking if he wasn't afraid I would truly fall for him and keep him as my own. He replied, "A princess of your extraordinary talent would hardly let a bit of beauty or a few flattering words sway her judgment." His words were so charming that I nearly lost control and took him then and there. But I had to hold back. It wasn't the right time. A month passed in a flash, and Prince Xiao had been in my residence for that entire time. Though he appeared calm and composed, I could sense his underlying anxiety. He was no longer confident that I would release him. This past month had been difficult for me too. Starting from the second day Prince Xiao was brought into my residence, my troubles began. First, someone instigated the emperor, attempting to pressure me. I gave the emperor a large sum of money to silence him. When soft approaches failed, they resorted to harder ones. Suddenly, talks of purging the corrupt and executing the demonists arose in the capital. Many came to assassinate me. Some were Prince Xiao's people. Some were misguided. And some sought to gain fame. But a month was enough time for me to sort out these troubles. Just then, someone from the Divine Mechanics Pavilion reported, delivering the custom-made golden collar I had ordered. The messenger timidly relayed the pavilion master's exact words. The pavilion master said if your highness asks him to make such an unseemly item again, he will smash the princess's estate. This golden collar was custom-made. Once it clasped, it would lock permanently. Impossible to open again. I could only respond with a wry smile. Fortunately, there was only one Prince Xiao in this world worthy of the Divine Mechanics Pavilion's craftsmanship. Today was a good day. The moment I had been waiting for had arrived. I led Prince Xiao to a tall building, overlooking the street below. Prince Xiao showed no joy. Instead, his brow was furrowed, as if troubled. I knew well why he was anxious. I had planned this intentionally. The window faced the long street in front of the princess's estate, where a fierce battle was currently unfolding. Prince Xiao stood by the window, silent, watching the fight with me. As the battle ended, bodies were covered with white sheets and carried away. Precisely 32 of them, the exact number of Prince Xiao's caravan members. That was no ordinary merchant caravan, but a group of loyal bodyguards escorting Prince Xiao. Prince Xiao looked at me, his face ashen. I reached out to unfasten his clothes, but he gripped my hand. Is the princess intending to declare war on the prosperous state? The princess should think carefully. The Dominion state is no match for my prosperous state. Prince Xiao had completely dropped his pretense. I corrected him. The prosperous state sent its own prince to spy on the Great Dominion first. How could it be the Great Dominion wanting to declare war? What does the princess truly desire? He asked. Gold and silver. Or a lifetime with one partner? Whatever I can afford and achieve, I can promise you. Prince Xiao was making a final struggle. Of course. I want this world, I thought to myself. Otherwise, why would I go to such lengths to keep the prodigy of the prosperous state? Keeping Prince Xiao would destroy the prosperous state's future. I didn't answer. Just gazed at him silently. Prince Xiao's grip on my arm slowly loosened. And he slumped against the wall, sliding to the floor. Before we left, I had given him a drug that would weaken his limbs. And it was now taking effect. Prince Xiao seemed to understand. He looked up at me, struggling to speak. Princess of the Dominion State. You are too greedy. That is not something a woman should aspire to. I smiled, stroking his face. Not angry in the least. I've given you a new name, you knew, Jade Slave. With that, I pulled open Prince Xiao's clothing, pierced his chest with a long needle, and fastened the golden collar I had specifically made for him. Outside, the street was stained with blood. Inside, the room was disheveled. This round, I had won. It was time to enjoy my spoils of war. I pressed Prince Xiao against the wall and completely took him. His face was flushed, his eyes filled with humiliation. I whispered in his ear. You knew. Since you were already moved, why pretend to be forced by me? Prince Xiao's body stiffened. Prince Xiao was a very charming man. Over that month, I had hesitated, wondering if I should abandon my current plans and marry him. I wasn't necessarily set on conquering the world. I just didn't want to live my life as someone's daughter, someone's wife, someone's mother, a mere tool, a piece of property. I wanted to live a full life with dignity, like a person. It was just that the only way I could think of to achieve this simple wish was to contend for power. Prince Xiao's actions had given me a glimpse of that fantasy. For this, I learned much about the customs of the prosperous state and Prince Xiao's past. Among them was a widely praised story: a courtesan had accused a certain merchant of forcing himself on her. Because courtesans were considered lowly, she endured 30 lashes to earn the right to accuse him. The woman spoke tearfully, but the merchant claimed she had acted loosely and enticed him. The woman, due to her courtesan background, was doubted and scrutinized. Prince Xiao was present, listening to the public's debate, and made his judgment. If there was mutual attraction, how could there be coercion? Because of these words, the woman's accusation failed, and she drowned herself in a lake. The world praised the prince's sagacity, a courtesan's indignation, courage, pain, and persistence all vanished lightly with a pool of water. After hearing this, I finally understood. Prince Xiao had simply made the choice most beneficial to himself. Prince Xiao possessed astonishing talent and the ability to aid the world. But his world did not include women. When faced with useless women, he was as ruthless and shallow as any other man. Such a person could be a good ruler but not a good partner. I could not rely on him. I could only rely on myself. That's why I ordered that golden collar. According to prosperous state custom, only favored concubines and pets would wear rings through their chests to signify ownership. This extreme act of humiliation would sever any lingering hesitation or weakness in my heart. A humiliated Prince Xiao would surely want to kill me after his escape. This way, besides fighting, I would have no other path. Prince Xiao only took a day to compose himself. I summoned him to attend me, calling him you knew. But he showed no humiliation. Instead, he chatted and drank tea with me, smiling and amusing me. as if he had accepted his fate. I secretly raised my guard. I didn't believe Prince Xiao would resign himself to fate. This demeanor, rather than acceptance, made me believe he was confident in his own schemes. I couldn't grasp the situation. But I wasn't afraid of open attacks or hidden plots. I thought, could the prosperous state truly wage war on the Great Dominion? If so, I'd be laughing in my sleep. The prosperous state was indeed stronger than the Great Dominion. But it was too far away. How much strength could its army exert upon arrival? 10 days later, Prince Xiao suddenly told me. I asked the princess to dispatch a troop of soldiers to escort me back to the prosperous state. I didn't understand, and was about to mock Prince Xiao for his foolish dream. But he spoke first, cutting me off. Princess, please wait a moment before making your decision. Almost as soon as Prince Xiao's words fell, a subordinate rushed in with an urgent military report. The glorious state has launched a surprise attack on the border. Our border defenses have suffered heavy losses. The Prince's Grand Tutor of the prosperous state has already entered the glorious state's military camp. The prosperous state and the glorious state have formed an alliance. I double-checked. Prince Xiao had managed to orchestrate such a major event right under my nose. I had already tried to consider him highly, but I had still underestimated him. While I was deep in thought, I heard Prince Xiao, hands behind his back, calmly declare, "It's not just the glorious state. The prosperous state has also begun mobilizing troops, preparing to attack the Dominion state alongside the glorious state. However, the prosperous state does not wish to easily start a war. If the princess is willing to escort me back to the prosperous state, the conflict can be avoided. Otherwise, my father, the emperor, will come to your Dominion state capital to bring me home." Wishful thinking. I gnashed these words out. No matter. Princess still has time to consider. Yu Nu awaits the princess's favorable reply. The name Yu Nu was originally meant to humiliate Prince Xiao. But now, spoken from his lips, it became a blatant mockery of me. I stopped bickering with Prince Xiao and chose a horse to ride to the imperial palace, preparing to have the emperor convene an assembly of ministers. The Great Dominion was not particularly strong, let alone the flourishing prosperous state. Even the glorious state alone was enough to make the Great Dominion prepare anxiously. If the two countries collaborated, the Great Dominion would be easily devoured. Halfway there, I suddenly realized something. If the prosperous state truly intended to mobilize troops, why would Prince Xiao tell me? By the time the prosperous state's army reached our borders, whether to fight or not would no longer be my decision. He was lying. Why was he running? I immediately turned my horse around and galloped back to the princess's estate. Inside the princess's estate, maids and servants lay sprawled on the ground. Looking around, I saw Prince Xiao leap onto a horse and gallop away. If I had returned any later, I probably wouldn't have even seen his shadow. I immediately mounted a horse and gave chase. After a few strides, the distance didn't shrink. I knew I couldn't catch him. Killing Prince Xiao was a last resort. But compared to letting him escape, killing him was the best choice. While he lived, he would be the greatest obstacle on my path forward. As for that hint of reluctance, I could slowly express it to his corpse after he died. I slowed my horse, drew my bow, and aimed an arrow straight at Prince Xiao. Suddenly, hoofbeats echoed from afar. By imperial decree, summon the Grand Princess immediately to the palace for an audience with the emperor. Why would he summon me at this crucial moment? I ignored it, drew my bow, and released the arrow. A figure suddenly darted out beside Prince Xiao, blocking the arrow for him and falling to the ground. I immediately prepared a second arrow. I nocked the arrow, aimed, and was about to release it when the commander of the Imperial City Guard rode up to me. I completely lost sight of Prince Xiao. Prince Xiao had escaped. On the way to the palace, I understood everything. The emperor had recently taken a new concubine. This was common, and I hadn't paid it much mind. Now, it seemed, this concubine was from the prosperous state. Prince Xiao had made a deal with the emperor through her, appearing at a crucial moment to intercept me. All the emperor cared about was money. I could give him money to keep him quiet, and Prince Xiao could also give him money to help with a harmless small favor. As for the glorious state, it probably intended to borrow the prosperous state's strength to plunder the great dominion cities. Bordering countries was inherently a curse. Everyone wanted a piece of the other. It was easily exploited. Thinking of this, I somewhat envied Prince Xiao. Some people were born with half the world already in their hands, and countless others would assist their schemes. Others, despite their painstaking efforts, would be betrayed by their own foolish brother, leading to all their previous efforts being in vain. Upon entering the palace, before the emperor could say anything, I directly killed his new concubine. Blood splattered all over him. He had ordered many people killed before, but this was the first time he had witnessed such a bloody scene firsthand. In the end, he was too terrified to say anything. I directly bypassed the emperor and began issuing orders. First, I ordered a widespread manhunt for Prince Xiao. I didn't have much hope of capturing him. I only wished to impede his return to the prosperous state, making the prosperous state hesitant. The most important thing now was to deal with the glorious state's invasion. I listened to the minister's advice, dispatching generals and allocating military provisions to confront the glorious state. Time could not be drawn out for too long. While Prince Xiao was still within the Dominion state, the prosperous state would be hesitant. Once Prince Xiao left the country, the prosperous state would definitely fully support the glorious state in attacking the Dominion state. At that point, the Dominion state might not be able to contend with them. After all, I was not the emperor. In handling state affairs, I lacked the legitimacy of authority. The army was not entirely loyal to me, and there were those in court who were dissatisfied with me, such as the former commander of the Imperial City Guard. I wasn't confident that I could maintain control of the country during a crisis. Therefore, the war had to end as quickly as possible. Prince Xiao's disruption wasn't entirely without benefit. Almost all of the prosperous state's spies in the Dominion state capital were exposed. Next, some were killed, some captured, some interrogated. The entire capital became much quieter. Also, the Imperial City Guard commander was replaced under a pretext I found. If he hadn't interfered, Prince Xiao would have died long ago, and I wouldn't have to worry about his escape every day, which had become almost an obsession. The war dragged on for over a month, reaching a stalemate. Left with no choice, I resorted to my ultimate move, throwing money at the problem. I sent people to the glorious state to purchase grain from merchants, buying as much as possible. Consequently, grain prices soared daily. The emperor of the glorious state actually took advantage of this to sell off military grain, making a huge profit. Inside the glorious state, panic spread. And with insufficient military provisions, the army naturally lost its will to fight. The general I had dispatched seized the opportunity to counterattack, capturing a city from the glorious state. This war depleted almost half of my private treasury. However, the spending was not yet over. This war had been fought splendidly. And naturally, rewards and promotions were due. I didn't interfere with how the rewards were allocated, letting the emperor handle it himself. He was troubled, consulting with people all day, seeking a method that could both win over the border generals and save money. While the emperor was still worrying, I directly took a sum of money and large carts of meat to the border, ensuring they arrived before the imperial decree. This money nearly drained my last savings, but it was a necessary expenditure. If the general accepted the things I sent without the emperor's approval, he would have bypassed the emperor and would no longer be the emperor's general. If he didn't accept them, after seeing these provisions, the emperor wouldn't be able to offer rewards that satisfied the generals. This was an open scheme: either the emperor would be dissatisfied with the border generals, or the border generals would be dissatisfied with the emperor. Whatever the outcome, I would be the beneficiary. I was determined to secure this army. Ultimately, the general could not bear to see his soldiers suffer and accepted my provisions. All under heaven's scramble for profit. With money, I held the throat of everyone in the world. The emperor did not understand this principle, only knowing to increase commercial taxes, attempting to seize money from my hands through this method. But the more he collected, the more methods others devised. He not only failed to get money but also alienated people further. Now, with both the court and the army in my hands, I no longer needed to borrow his name. My foolish brother should abdicate. The ministers were all prepared for my ascension to the throne. But I quieted my plans. Nothing else. Simply because I had been frequently vomiting and feeling unwell recently, I consulted a royal physician, who surprisingly told me it was a pregnancy. Thinking back, Prince Xiao and I had often been intimate, and I hadn't thought about contraception at all. It was normal to have a child. Since I was already pregnant, it was naturally impossible to abort it. Fortunately, I also needed an heir. Women should not overexert themselves during pregnancy. So I postponed my plans for ascension, deciding to let my foolish brother remain emperor for another year. However, power would still remain firmly in my hands. I didn't remain idle. One cannot allow others to sleep soundly next to their bed. Naturally, I wouldn't tolerate the glorious state and the prosperous state flirting under my nose. All traffic between the prosperous state and the glorious state had to pass through a small, insignificant country called the Cloud State. The Cloud State was weak and dared not refuse the prosperous state, nor the glorious state, and certainly not the Dominion State. The Dominion State general easily occupied the Cloud State, calling it stationing troops in the Cloud State to help them repel foreign enemies. This severed communication between the prosperous state and the glorious state. Without the prosperous state's support, and under the brilliant rule of the glorious state's ruler, the glorious state rapidly approached the brink of collapse. In contrast, the Great Dominion developed rapidly. I earned money and spent almost all of it immediately, building roads, bridges, recruiting soldiers and horses, forging weapons. Each endeavor incurred massive costs, but the results were equally impressive. The common people had spare money for entertainment, and I earned even more. Walking on the streets, one could see a prosperous scene. More talented individuals, drawn by the rising reputation, came forward. As my due date approached, the glorious state once again proactively initiated war. Compared to the ambitious glorious state of a year ago, this war was merely its death throes. I, with my pregnant belly, consulted with my ministers about countermeasures. I deliberately slowed down, gradually eroding the morale of the glorious state army. This war lasted for over 2 months. I had successfully given birth. The child was a daughter. If this counterattack exhausted their remaining national strength without achieving any results, the general would advance straight to the glorious state capital. The glorious emperor personally led his troops to battle. After being defeated, he jumped off the city wall, dying for his country. The empress poisoned all the concubines and princesses in the harem, including herself. The glorious crown prince also intended to jump off the city wall. But once on top, his legs trembled, and he couldn't bring himself to jump. He was brought back by the general. I bestowed upon the glorious crown prince the title of Marquis of Tranquil Joy. I sent people to accompany the Marquis of Tranquil Joy, drinking and reveling all day. Before long, the Marquis of Tranquil Joy died suddenly from excessive drinking, leaving no children. The once powerful glorious state thus perished, its imperial family completely wiped out. The vast territory of the glorious state became part of the Great Dominion. With the threat of national destruction averted, I replaced my brother and ascended the throne, becoming the first female emperor in the history of the Great Dominion. I declared my daughter crown princess. I established women's schools, created women's households, and appointed female officials, ensuring that daughters across the land no longer had only marriage and childbearing as their sole path. My brother, after abdicating, could not cope and committed suicide. I personally collected his remains. I had promised my father I would diligently assist my brother. Yet now I had personally seized his empire and guided him to his grave. I felt a pang of guilt. I then ordered the extermination of all his remaining bloodline. Afterward, I moved the capital to the former border of the glorious state. This location, considering the Great Dominion's current territory, was somewhat peripheral, but for the entire world, it was perfectly situated. I had never forgotten the prosperous state for a single day. Nor had I forgotten Prince Xiao for a single day. The glorious state was now annihilated. My only remaining obstacle to unifying the world was the prosperous state. The prosperous state had already subjugated its neighboring smaller countries, significantly expanding its territory and becoming a regional hegemon. Its strength was greater than ever before. However, the Great Dominion had developed even faster and now had the qualifications to contend with the prosperous state. I heard that since Prince Xiao returned to his country, he hadn't been close to women, leading to him having no children. The prosperous emperor had therefore become somewhat hesitant, developing thoughts of replacing him, allowing the Prince of Xixia to contend with Prince Xiao. Thinking of this, I wrote him a letter.